In the quiet suburb of Meadow Creek, life moved at a gentle, predictable pace. It was a town of manicured lawns, white picket fences, and the kind of community where the sound of children playing echoed from dawn until dusk. The heart of this community was its local park, and within it, the central playground. For the kids of Meadow Creek, it was a kingdom of swings that touched the sky, slides that defied gravity, and a sandbox that held the blueprints of 1,000 castles. One afternoon in the late spring of 1996, the playground was a beehive of activity. Among the joyful chaos was 6-year-old Emily Patterson, a small girl with a wild imagination and 2 mismatched pigtails that bounced as she ran. Emily's mother, Sarah, sat on a nearby bench reading a book, her eyes occasionally flicking up to make sure her daughter was within sight. Emily was playing with her best friend, a little boy named Liam. They were deep in a game of make-believe, their voices a symphony of giggles and shouted instructions. At exactly 3:45 p.m., a sudden call from a neighbor distracted Sarah. The conversation was brief, only a minute or two. She glanced back toward the playground, expecting to see Emily and Liam still playing. But Liam was now alone, pushing the swing set back and forth, a puzzled look on his face. Emily was gone. A mother's first reaction is never panic. It's a rapid, logical search. Sarah walked to the slide, then the sandbox, calling her daughter's name. The shouts turned to a frantic tone as she checked the perimeter of the park. Liam, seeing the urgency in her mother's voice, pointed to the last place he had seen her. She was by the jungle gym, Mommy. A lady came and talked to her. She was tall and had a black hat on. The frantic minutes turned into an hour. The park was now filled with panicked neighbors, their own children clutched in their arms. The police arrived, their sirens a stark, terrifying sound in a town that had rarely heard them. The initial search was a blur of police cars, flashing lights, and the heavy, chilling silence of the playground. Emily was nowhere to be found. No one had seen anything. The tall woman in the black hat was a ghost. The investigation was a whirlwind of activity. The FBI was called in. The playground was meticulously combed over, but there were no footprints, no stray hairs, no clues. The only thing left behind was a sense of utter, heartbreaking emptiness. The town of Meadow Creek went from a place of open doors to a fortress of fear. A single missing child had done what decades of crime novels and news reports had failed to do. It had taught them that the world was not a safe place. Emily's parents, Sarah and Mark, became the face of a national tragedy. They made televised appeals, their tear-streaked faces a constant presence on the news. They spoke of Emily's infectious laugh, her love for drawing, and her habit of leaving her shoes untied. The public sympathized, but as weeks turned into months, the leads dried up. The initial flood of tips dwindled to a trickle. The case went cold. The vanished playground became a monument to a grief that had no end. For 20 years the case remained unsolved. The park was renamed to the Emily Patterson Memorial Park, but no one played there anymore. The swings, once a source of joy, now stood motionless, a silent tribute to a life cut short. The town of Meadow Creek was still beautiful, but it had a scar that would never heal. The case was a ghost, a whisper in the wind. A ghost that haunted every parent, every child, and every single person who had ever lived there. Detective Alex Riley, a young, ambitious detective, was a new face on the force. He had been a child when Emily disappeared, and the case had always fascinated him. He petitioned his superiors to reopen the case. With a fresh set of eyes, he began to re-examine the old files. The original investigation had been thorough, but it had been a product of its time. The technology was limited, the focus was on the immediate suspects. But Alex was looking for something else. He was looking for the subtle, human details. He began with the interviews again. The original transcripts were faded and dated, but he could hear the fear and shock in the voices of the witnesses. He re-interviewed Emily's best friend, Liam, now a man in his late 20s. Liam had been a child at the time, and his memory was fragmented, but he remembered one thing vividly. The tall woman in the black hat had given Emily a small green toy. The police had dismissed it as a child's imagination, but Alex paid attention. He reread Liam's original statement. It was a tiny little frog, Liam had said. It had a gold circle on its back. The toy had never been found. Alex then focused on the parents, Sarah and Mark Patterson. They were no longer the young, hopeful couple they had been. Their marriage had fallen apart under the weight of their grief. He reread their statements. Both of them had been a blur of emotions, but something in Sarah's statement struck him. She had mentioned a woman who had approached her a few weeks before the abduction. A woman who had been asking questions about Emily. Sarah had dismissed it at the time, But the description of the woman was almost identical to the description of the woman who had allegedly taken Emily. The woman's name was mentioned in a small, almost illegible note in the corner of the file. It was a name that had been dismissed as a lead. A woman named Clara Jenkins. Alex ran her name through the system. Clara Jenkins had been a former social worker who had lost her license for unethical practices. She had been accused of fabricating child abuse cases to help families she believed were being wronged. Her profile showed she had a history of mental health issues and a deep-seated desire to save children from what she perceived as harmful environments. Alex's gut twisted. He looked at the details of Clara Jenkins's life. A year before the abduction, she had been working on a case involving a family that lived just a few blocks from the Pattersons. The case had been dismissed and she had been fired shortly after. The family she had been trying to help had a young daughter, around Emily's age, who had been taken away from her parents by the state. Clara had been obsessed with that case, believing the child was in danger. He then re-examined the crime scene photos. He looked at the ground, the foliage, the everything. And then he saw it. A single, small object, half buried in the dirt, that had been dismissed by the original investigators as a piece of trash. It was a broken piece of plastic. It was a small green plastic frog. On its back, a small gold circle was painted on it. It was the toy that Liam had described. The toy was evidence, a piece of the puzzle that had been right in front of them all along. Alex went to visit Clara Jenkins. She was living in a dilapidated apartment, a shadow of the person she once was. She had lost her job, her family, and her mind. He showed her the photo of the toy. Her eyes, once blank and empty, filled with tears. She didn't deny it. She confessed. She didn't abduct Emily to harm her. She abducted her to save her. She had been watching the Patterson family for weeks. She believed that Sarah and Mark were too distracted, too busy, to see the pain in Emily's eyes. The pain that only she, a trained social worker, could see. She believed that Emily was a neglected child, that her parents' busy lives were a form of abuse. She had convinced herself that she was doing the right thing. The day of the abduction, she had approached Emily, promising her a special toy if she would come with her. Emily, a trusting and innocent child, had followed her. Clara had taken her to an old, abandoned house she had been renovating. She had planned to keep Emily safe there, to raise her as her own, to give her the love she believed she wasn't getting. But she had been wrong. Clara confessed to the crime, but she never revealed what happened to Emily. She said that a few days after the abduction, a man had come to the house, and he had taken Emily from her. She claimed she didn't know who he was or where he took Emily. She said he had threatened her, telling her he would hurt her if she ever spoke about it. She was too terrified to say a word. She never saw him again. She never saw Emily again. She said the man was tall and had a black hat on. The police were skeptical. They believed Clara was a lone wolf, that the story of the man was a lie, a final attempt to hide the truth. But Alex's gut told him differently. He went to the old abandoned house where Clara had held Emily. He scoured the property. And then, in a hidden compartment in the wall, he found a small, rusted music box. It was a music box that had belonged to Emily. He opened it and a small, delicate tune began to play. The music box was proof that Emily had been there. But it was the only proof they had. The case of Emily Patterson remains unsolved. Clara Jenkins was convicted of kidnapping, but the mystery of what happened to Emily, and who the man in the black hat was, remains a chilling open question. The playground is still empty, and the town of Meadow Creek still lives in the shadow of a crime that had no rhyme or reason. A crime that showed them that sometimes, the most terrifying monsters are not in the dark woods, but in the troubled minds of those who walk among us. This story isn't just about a missing child. It's about what happens when a community's sense of security is shattered and a ghost of a case haunts a town for a generation. It's about the truth that sometimes, the most chilling mysteries are the ones that have no end. If this story made you look at your own community a little differently, please subscribe for more. And if you have a story you want us to tell, let us know in the comments below. We're here to give a voice to the forgotten.